Welcome back to the second of three videos. The topic is warehousing. And warehousing, of course, the first video talked all about moving goods. But at some point, we have to have somebody handle goods because they need to go from one mode of transportation to another. They need to maybe go from one truck that did the long distance to a smaller delivery van that brings items directly to customers. And warehousing is where many of these things happen, but more than that. So it enables firms to store sort of purchases that they've made, work in progress, and finished goods, but also it enables firms to perform what's called break bulk and assembly activities. So break bulk means we get a big pallet full of product and not the whole product goes, or not the whole pallet goes to one customer. So we need to break up our big shipments into smaller shipments that go to our customers. It provides for faster and more frequent deliveries, and that can result in better customer service. Um, and in general, warehousing is a support function for purchasing, production, and distribution activities. So all things that are quite central to our supply chain. So when we're looking at the four bullet points here, so consolidation warehouses, those collect large numbers of less than truckload shipments for transport in larger quantities for long distances. Remember the example of the European chocolates. They would be shipped to what's called a consolidation warehouse. In that consolidation warehouse, they would collect all the chocolates from the Ferreros, from the Haribos, from the Storks, from the Godiva chocolates, and from the Lindt, and it would all wait there until all those shipments were there, and they would be put into a container and then move onwards. Then we have private warehouses are owned by the firm that stores their own goods, and that has its distinct advantages because it can reduce our sort of purchasing and transportation cost, and it offers a really great control over the service, and helps us uh, better utilize our workforce. And so when we own our own warehouse, we can decide where they go, and that means we can take advantages of cheaper sources of supply or cheaper sources of labor. So both of those are possibilities. And we can also sometimes, if we own the asset, that sometimes can be combined to generate income or tax advantages. The disadvantage if you own your own warehouse is certainly it's the financial risk, and you lose flexibility um, because it binds you as a company to a location, and that might not be optimal in the long run. And it's also, if you own a warehouse and you own everything that's in there, if anything happens to that, insurance companies don't like insuring goods in private warehouses because it's yours, it's under your control, and the insurance company has very little opportunity to check that you weren't involved in any kind of insurance claim that might have happened to your goods in your warehouse. Uh, the opposite model, of course, are public warehouses that are owned by for-profit organizations, and they contract out or lease a wide range of warehousing solutions, obviously, but also in these settings, there's often light manufacturing involved, reassembling goods and so on, and distribution services. So public warehouses combine the pure warehouse with other options, and we'll get into that in the third videos. And then the cold chains, is just a specialized kind of warehouse, just temperature controlled transportation, transfers, and warehousing. Anything that is fresh needs to be kept at certain temperatures and in a certain climate controlled environment. We call that a cold chain. And so, looking at those services that public warehouses can do in particular, again, breaking apart large shipments and combining them into specific customer orders with other goods coming from other places and then shipping them out is one part. Um, Often repackaged for the service, but not only handling the packages. Sometimes public warehouse services provide final assembly and create customized final goods, or they handle incoming out and outgoing quality inspections. Think about those ideas when you order material from overseas. I'll go back to my chocolate example. It is a lot easier for a company in the Netherlands to have a quality inspection and make sure that all the goods that have made it to that point are okay before we go to the extra expense of sending all the stuff all the way to Vancouver, only for the final recipient to look at this and say, well, this is all broken. We can't use this. It makes a lot more sense to have the public warehouse service do a quality inspection before things move on. But material handling, documentation services, and to a part equipment maintenance, those things are quite frequent public warehouse services. But certainly, it's a little surprising that the short and long-term storage is the second last of the bullet points here. Uh, Storing items while they're waiting for the final destination and so on is, of course, one of the core functions. And if your product happens to be perishable, you would use that in conjunction with cold chain services. You would use that, make sure that your products get stored in the right climate environment. Then we're moving on to the warehouse location, because this is a interesting development that started off with the argument way back when. So this was in the 1820s that people started thinking about this and said, like, well, the first thought was that transportation costs alone should be minimized when we consider facility locations. And this assumed that prices and manufacturing costs would be identical regardless of the location of the warehouse. But then in the 1950s, there was a location theory developed by Greenhut that was based on maximizing profit instead of only focusing on transportation cost. Because the theory posited that demand and prices can potentially vary by location. And so the best locations might actually not minimize the costs. But then also in a similar time, one of the most popular theories was in the 1940s. Edgar Hoover recommended three different types of strategies. One was saying we have a market position strategy where warehouses are close to customers. They maximize the distribution service and improve transportation economies of scale. This is clearly what giants like Amazon are doing. There's a number of warehouses that Amazon owns around the Lower Mainland and many other highly concentrated urban areas like that. And the idea is, well, we can offer you that famous, next day shipping more easily if we have our warehouses close to where all the customers live. So that's the market position strategy. The next one is the product position strategy, which is closer to the supply source where the firm collects the goods and then consolidates them that helps them minimize inbound transport costs. If you think about iconic pictures of Canada, the grain elevators in the prairies that are often used to show the wide country that produces so much of the world's grain. Those grain elevators are a product position strategy of their warehouses. Basically, positioned close to the fields, all the farmers from the area bring the grain to these grain elevators, and then there they get put together with all the other farmers' harvests, and then they get consolidated and brought to the markets in the urban centers. And then, probably not surprising, um, market is one extreme, product is the other extreme. Um, Somewhere in the middle is the intermediately positioned strategy, um, where we position our facilities somewhere midway between supply sources and customers when our distribution requirements are high, but also the product comes from various locations. And one of the questions that we also have to consider is, well, if we are looking to see what number and where to put our warehouses, it is important for us to know um, that we want to be able to minimize both the cost and the risk of our warehouse locations. So the idea is if we increase the number of our warehouses, our system becomes less centralized and our responsiveness and the delivery service opportunities, they increase. But at the same time, our operating and inventory costs also increase, and the trade-off between costs and customer service must be considered here. Um, and what we're looking at here when we say risk pooling, the risk pooling describes the relationship between the number of warehouses, the inventory, and the customer service. And so that is estimated what's called by the square root rule. So if you look at this slightly intimidating looking formula here, what we have is we look at the system stock if we by comparing the different number of warehouses, and we want to have a look at what happens if we change the number of warehouses in our proposed system, because the idea is that if we have more warehouses, not every one of the warehouses needs to carry the same amount of product to cover our service needs. And so that helps us identify the ideal number of warehouses for our system. And so as the final thing, when we're looking at warehouses, if we centralize our warehouses, we can lower our safety stocks and our average inventory levels. But also, if we have fewer warehouses, that means we're necessarily usually farther away from our customers, meaning that our customers will have to wait longer for deliveries. Um, uh, but at the same time, we can increase the customer service levels by our own suppliers because they only have that one destination, and we can it's easier for us to limit stockouts. But you see, there's a number of trade-offs here. Our outbound transportation costs increase, inbound transportation costs decrease because we have to drive more of our own trucks to our customers, but the inbound freight decreases because our own suppliers have to only deliver to the one location. So when we're looking at this, We can start integrating lean warehousing. So as our supply chain management capabilities improve, we get to move items more quickly, and that helps us sort of after we've developed, and it helps us in reinforcing the development of leaner capabilities. So in lean warehousing, we have a number of things that I hope ring a bell for you from our previous sessions. Reduced lot sizes and shipping company quantities. So hopefully sounds very familiar from last week. The commitment to customers and the quality of our service hopefully also rings a bell. Increased automation is one of the things that makes intuitive sense as we help process more and more goods with the help of automation. The error rates decreases and the throughput increases, and we can be better in assembly operations. And like I've mentioned last week, this lean operations tend to have a tendency to be green. Because if we have less waste, if we do things like a greater emphasis on what's called cross-docking, where we're not actually storing our inventory, but just receiving the bulk shipments, breaking them down, repackaging, and distributing right away, those sorts of things, when there isn't a lot of inventory holding, that tends to be very efficient, tends to be less using up resources. And in that, it tends to be actually also more environmentally friendly and sustainable. All right. Video 2 of 3 is wrapped up, and I hope to see you back for the video 3 of 3 for logistics services.